All right, so we're talking about DNA. We're talking about how DNA lines up with the Holy Bible, okay? Now, if you are reading the Bible, you will notice that there are all of the books are identifying, okay? So the Bible is all about identification, and we can basically confirm that in the first book of Genesis, okay? Genesis is basically a word that derives from gens, genealogy, and the Bible contains all kinds of genealogical record in regards to the children of God, okay? So we're talking about deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, and we're going to have to break the word up a little bit. So, the word deoxy, which is the first syllable, well, actually the first three syllables of the word, the scientific term used to describe certain people, it means containing less oxygen in the molecule than the compound from which it is derived, okay? And it is used in combination with the word deoxyribonucleic acid. Now, in the first video upload, I mentioned that the word rib is coincidentally added into this scientific term, okay? Let's go ahead and go to ribonucleic acid and see what it has to say about definition, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and read it. You can go ahead and Google this for yourselves if you want. Ribonucleic acid, any of a class of single-stranded nucleic acid molecules of ribose and uracil found chiefly in the cytoplasm of cells. There's that word cells, okay? Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit. Okay, so you got the word cell there. Recall that when we went to the Blue Letter Bible and we Googled or used the tool in order to define the word rib, we came up with the same word cell. Okay, so let me go ahead and continue on defining RNA, ribonucleic acid, okay, of cells and in certain viruses important in protein synthesis and in the transmission of genetic information transcribed from DNA. Okay, so I don't know if that is a good description, but you are more than welcomed to go and research this on your own. Okay, this is a very, very hard study, even for those who have taken physiological psychology, which I did, and I got a D in that class. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to let's go ahead and go back to DNA strands. Okay, here's the DNA strand right here. It is basically it looks like two serpents that are entwining themselves, going up in or down in a particular direction. The reason why I'm bringing up the serpent is because this is a good example, visually speaking, of how the Kundalini works and how Adam and Eve were defiled by the serpent. Okay, so they were defiled by the Kundalini because they believed the lie that they were told by Satan, that they could be enlightened or that they could be as God. Okay, they were like God because God created them and He created them in His image. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to let me go back to my notes here. I just took a few different notes. Now, when you have the Bible that you're reading and you are specifically reading about flesh and bone and how Adam and Eve became one, you're going to have to use you're going to have to think logically. Okay, so biologically speaking, they would have had to mate. Now, what happens when two people mate? They become one flesh according to God. Okay, so when you are looking at Adam and Eve, when you are researching Adam and Eve, let's go ahead and go back to Genesis chapter 2. Let's go ahead and read starting from Genesis chapter 2 verse 21, and we'll take it all the way to the end of the chapter. Okay, all right, so 21, and the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept and took And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman and brought her unto the man. Remember, man is Adam. And everyone who comes from this specific person named Adam is of Adam's genealogical DNA strand. Okay, and that's what the Bible is all about. It's about identifying those children who are all connected to Adam. And I am speaking genetically. All right, so let's go ahead and continue on 23. And Adam said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man." So she was taken out of man. How was she taken out of man? Well, God took the rib and placed it into Eve. And I'm talking about genetically speaking. Okay, if you don't get that, if you don't understand that, there is something seriously wrong with your mind or your brain. You are unable to function, logically speaking, and or you have an agenda. Okay, now. And brought her unto the man. Genesis 2:22. Basically, this is the sexual union that occurred between Adam and Eve. Okay, so let's move on to verse 24. "Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And they were both naked, and the man and his wife, and were not ashamed." They were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. When you research Genesis, when you research Adam and Eve, you could basically find that they had one God, and their God was the one who created them. What happened was, when we see that they were not ashamed in Genesis chapter 2, verse 25, and compare it to when they were hiding themselves or covering up their private parts, we will see that that only occurred after they were with Satan, sexually speaking. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop here and we will start on number 6. Okay.